Ladies, gentlemen, and Haradrim of all ages, with the release of the Vessel of Hated expansion, tons of people have been playing Diablo 4 again, and as time passes, players are moving further and further into the endgame, and a major part of doing that is interacting quite heavily with item crafting and upgrading as a system. From tempering to enchanting to masterworking, and all of this costs quite a lot of different material resources to actually accomplish. The biggest bottleneck for most of the people this season so far, and a lot of the faster players have found, has been Forgotten Souls. These were mostly used for either rerolling on masterworking or just for generally masterworking on ancestral items specifically. This, however, was fixed quite effectively in a hotfix right before the weekend that changes the drop rates of these, and with this a new bottleneck has started to appear, which is Iron Chunks and Rawhide. These are the most basic crafting materials for most items, required for pretty much any change that you want to make to a piece of gear in the game, and with Forbidden Souls now dropping in excess and Obdicite becoming pretty easy to farm in large quantities as well, it is now Iron Chunks and Rawhide that have become the newest thing blocking players off from upgrading. So today we're going to talk about the 4 main ways that you can farm this the most efficiently, depending on your situation, and just how much that actually helps. The first and generally fastest feeling way then entirely depends on your character strength, or who you know, and how many boss summoning materials you have, because it's just burning through Lair Bosses on repeat, especially on Torment 4. Lair Bosses drop a reasonable amount of these materials on death quite consistently, and if you are strong enough to kill them quickly, and if you have the materials to summon them, this quickly becomes the fastest method of getting these materials, especially if you then salvage all of the items that you don't need after they drop, as uniques, and especially ancestral uniques, give pretty decent return rates on both Rawhide and Iron Chunks. Of course, not everyone is that strong or has that kind of a stack of boss material sitting around either, so let's talk about the other best ways as far as actual results for time investment. Second up is Nightmare Dungeons. These also increase their rewards for each Torment tier that you do them on. Nightmare Dungeons, when run back to back with a build that can fly through them, which is much easier to achieve than a build that can kill a Lair boss in seconds, easily can give a couple hundred per run at least, which is not too bad at all, not too shabby. The specific way to run them and which ones to aim for this purpose is actually to look for longer ones like the Hantu Nightmare Dungeons, as these have more elites than most base game dungeons, and elites are specifically what have the best drop rates of these materials. So inside as well, you want to actually make sure that you hunt down all of the elite enemies that you can and slowly work your way towards the boss for an extra pop of Rawhide and Iron Chunks at the end here too. The next most efficient way is Whispers of the Dead caches. These pretty reliably give 300 or so for each of these 2 materials when you open them, even more for a greater cache if you happen to have one roll. There is also a specific cache of crafting materials that was added this season and now exists, and of course if you actually have this show up, it's very good if you're lucky enough to see it. This season especially, there are a lot more Whispers objectives as well, just existing across the map, and specifically quite a few more 5 Grim Favor rewarding Whispers objectives too, things like doing bosses now every once in a while. And for the most part, what this means is it is just way quicker and easier than ever to farm Whispers of the Dead cache rewards. Not to mention the currently existing bonus trick for this, which is that you can complete Whispers objectives and collect Grim Favors on Torment 1, and then switch to Torment 4 to actually hand them in. This will give you the Torment 4 cache rewards regardless. It's currently honestly uncertain if this is an intended functionality or if it will be fixed soon, because this was obviously changed to not be a thing a few seasons back, but now has been changed to exist again with no comment about it from the developers. But it's currently a part of the game that exists, so it's worth knowing about. The final sort of bonus then is the seasonal mechanic Seething Opals, and specifically the Seething Opal of materials. When this item is active, it gives every enemy that you kill a chance to drop crafting materials, including Rawhide and Iron Chunks. Surprising most people, this does actually affect activities like Lair Bosses and bit runs, because it just gives a chance on finishing the activity to actually spawn the rewards from your opal, rather than giving the drop chance to like individual enemies in pit tiers or things like that that don't drop anything normally. However, the best and most consistent combo for using the Seething Opal of materials is either Helltide, where you can run through dense packs of monsters and kill them quickly, or once again, Nightmare Dungeons, which is part of why Nightmare Dungeons have the efficiency level that they do for this, because you can combo these together very well, and if you run a Nightmare Dungeon with a Seething Opal of materials active, you get a fair amount of bonus crafting drops, which means more Rawhide and Iron Chunks. While the amount of Rawhide and Iron Chunks you get from this opal isn't actually massive, it is just basically free to have running while you do the other efficient materials anyways. It still seems to be less efficient than just like spam insta-killing Lair Bosses even to do Nightmare Dungeons with an opal active, but again, not every build can even do that to begin with, and materials are a thing that is somewhat limited. So this is a really good secondary option, and and while it is the most effective version of itself on Torment 4, as most things are, it will still work for you perfectly fine on any other difficulty that you're at, just with a bit less efficient return, of course. One last note then is that this may well be having its drop rates enhanced a fair bit tomorrow as well with the upcoming patch we know is coming, which is 2.0.3. One of the specific lines in the patch notes that we got for this refers to increasing the rates that automatic crafting materials are generated depending on difficulty tier increase. What this seems to be specifically referring to is the way that blue and yellow items get auto-salvaged in Torment difficulties, which then turns them into their salvage rewards and just sticks them into your inventory pretty much for free instead. If these rates are being increased, then that may have a large effect on this. However, the most it will do is actually just make Lair Bosses and Nightmare Dungeons even better. Especially Nightmare Dungeons though, as this is the main place where the gear auto-salvage mechanic even comes into play, as these are the main types of enemies that would otherwise drop yellows and blues. So essentially this is the long way of saying that these are all of the best current methods for farming rawhide and iron chunks in the game, and they will still be the best methods after the patch, just with the order of them potentially shifting slightly and the actual rewards per time for each activity being increased by hopefully a large amount. It's important because even right now, knowing how to farm a fairly large amount of this in the relative sense, the best ways that you can burn through the ones that you get very quickly still. Earlier I spent a bit farming about 2,000 rawhide. It didn't take me crazy long, it was just a few minutes, but then I spent all of it in seconds trying to get the right masterworking roll. I did one reset and one set of rolls and then it was done. It just goes so unbelievably fast, so I'm really hoping this patch helps it out a little bit on that front for sure. That just about does it for today then, everyone. Just a discussion and some advice in relation to rawhide and iron chunks, which are quickly becoming our newest bottleneck material to character progression upgrades in the deeper endgame for Diablo 4. Hopefully this helps you out then and makes your journey onwards and upwards just a little bit smoother. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.